If you think Stan Smith is just a sneaker, then you're about to discover the extraordinary story behind one of the most recognizable names in sports. Stan is a former world number one tennis player and one of the sport's most enduring ambassadors, both on and off the court. A two-time Grand Slam singles champion and winner of Wimbledon in 1972, Stan built his career on discipline, composure, and a relentless commitment to improvement. He was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame in 1987. Beyond his playing days, Stan has remained deeply engaged in the tennis community and in business. He is the co-founder of Stan Smith Events, a company he has helped lead for nearly 30 years, creating premier experiences for corporate partners, which began with the 1996 Olympics. He also co-founded the Smith Stearns Tennis Academy, where he continues to mentor players and share his expertise. Stan is the author of several books, including Stan Smith, Some People Think I'm a Shoe, and Winning Trust. Since 1973, his partnership with Adidas has elevated his signature shoe into one of the most popular and widely worn shoes in the world. Committed to giving back, Stan has been a driving force behind charitable efforts on Hilton Head, helping generate over $60 million for local causes through the Heritage Classic Foundation. Stan and the shoe that bears his name are true icons, and it's an honor to have him on the show. Welcome, Stan, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here, and you've done your homework. Gee.
Well, I'd like to think
some of those things you said.
We'll see as we get into it. Stan, you've been blessed with an incredible life and career spanning 6 decades in a sport you love and have significantly contributed to. Take us back to the beginning. When did you first pick up a tennis racket, and what was the tennis world like in those early days, which was very different than it is today?
Well, I grew up in Pasadena, California, and I had 2 older brothers, and my parents were both pretty athletic. And I played all the other sports. I played football, basketball, baseball, track and field, all through junior high school. In fact, actually, I ran into Tom Brady at the Olympics, this last Olympics in London, and I said I played in the Rose Bowl, and I was on the junior high school football team. And we played 4 plays during halftime of our high school teams, or the rivalries. And so he said, I was in the Rose Bowl, but I didn't play. And so I guess I played a little bit more in the Rose Bowl than he did. But that was really the fact that I was following my brother's footsteps in all those sports. And there was a group of parents in Pasadena who formed the Pasadena Tennis Patrons. And I had actually started playing tennis at around 10 or 11. I got my first new racket when I was 12, coming back from music camp. And these parents hired Pancho Segura. So when I was about 15 years old, I got a chance to work out on Saturday mornings at Pasadena High School. They had hardwire nets, which actually last forever. They're just wire. They're not regular nets. And the courts were sort of a pink beigeish color. And so it was not a country club atmosphere, but we practiced every Saturday, and the better players in our little group got to hit with Pancho Segura, who happened to be maybe the best tennis coach ever. He worked with Connors and Chang and all sorts of great players for a long time. And so I was fortunate to be able to get some wisdom from him for 20 minutes every Saturday morning.
It's funny to think that although your name is well recognized around the world, most people who know your name, especially today, have no idea that you not only played tennis, but that you were one of the dominant forces in the sport in the early 1970s. According to my research, and I hope I'm at least close, you won 64 singles titles during your pro career, including, of course, the U.S. Open in 1971 and then Wimbledon in 1972. And your doubles career was equally impressive, 54 titles by my count, highlighted by 4 U.S. Open wins between 1968 and 1980, and an Australian Open title in 1970. Stan, what was it like to compete at the highest level of your sport and to achieve the level of success you accomplished, which was really quite extraordinary?
Well, I had no idea what was going on when I was a teenager. I wasn't even good enough to play in the national junior championships until my final year in the juniors. I was actually 17, but in the 18 under division. And so I didn't really have any ambitions at that time, although I guess I shouldn't say that, because when I was about 17, I had these 4 goals. One was to make the U.S. Davis Cup team and to bring the Davis Cup back to the United States. 2 was to become the number 1 player in the U.S. 3 was to win Wimbledon, and 4 was to become the best player in the world. And again, I really wasn't even one of the better 16-year-olds in Southern California at the time. So those were kind of dream goals, I guess. But I got a scholarship to college, the University of Southern California, which was one of the better tennis schools at the time. That and UCLA were the 2 best, really. And I had a great coach there named George Tolley. And he helped me with, refining my game and becoming more solid as a tennis player. And of course, I played a lot. That was a time when freshmen couldn't play in college, in football, basketball, any sport. And so I spent my freshman year just working on my game and playing some outside tournaments that weren't collegiate tournaments. And then I was able to play the last 3 years for the varsity team at USC. And I was able to play in the summertime as well. And a lot of the players in the summer it was the amateur game then, and were some of the best players in the world playing the summer circuit. And I got a chance to try my game against these guys. And so I had a little bit of an understanding what it was like to play. But the year I graduated, I actually didn't graduate that year. I had another semester to graduate, but I played 1968. I played in the Davis Cup team for the first time and traveled with Donald Dell, who was our captain, Arthur Ashe, Charlie Passerell. Those 2 guys actually were a little bit, they'd made some mistakes in their life, I should say that. They both went to UCLA. But we went out there, and then Bob Lutz and I were the doubles team. And Charlie Passerell and Clark Graebner and Arthur Ashe were the singles players. So we traveled and played. Our goal, of course, was to win the Davis Cup, to go to Australia. At that time, the team that had won the year before didn't have to play until the final round, which they called the challenge round. And so we were the challengers, and we played them in Australia. And we won that and brought the Davis Cup back to the United States, and then I played the next 4 years on winning teams because we didn't have to play that 1 year. Then finally we did have to play, all the teams had to play every match, 4 matches or 5 matches to win the Davis Cup. But that was how it all went out. And as I got to play in the summertime, I got to see these guys play and got to see the standard that the great players had in the world. And so it gave me a better understanding, but it really wasn't until my first couple of years outside of college, just graduating, that I really thought that I might have a chance to become, one of the best players.
And you would go on to reach the finals of all 4 Grand Slam events, 16 appearances in total, including 3 in singles and 13 in doubles. Stan, I've been fortunate to attend a few Grand Slam finals myself, and I want to ask you about Wimbledon.
We never played. I didn't see you in the draw.
Never played. I was there in the stands.
Oh, okay.
But I'll tell you, as you know, there's something very special about center court at Wimbledon, and that was just from the stands. Tell us what that was like from your perspective as a player, stepping onto that court specifically and competing in one of the most iconic sports venues in the world.
It really is the ultimate for the players. Even players like Nadal, who are supposedly clay court players, he won Wimbledon, but he really coveted the opportunity to play on that center court. And a lot of the great players that won it multiple times think of that as their home court because it's so special. But I remember the first time I played it, I was 19 years old, and they wouldn't do that today. But I wasn't one of the better players, but I was playing one of the English players who was also 19 years old, who was their up and coming young player. And they put us on center court. And I learned a lesson that day because I was so nervous. You hear the day before that you're going to be playing on center court. So uh, you don't have too much time to prepare. You've got about 24 hours. And so during that time, I was, scared stiff to be playing on that court. And all I could think about is how nervous I was going to be playing on the court. So we walk on the court, and at that time, we literally had only 4 minutes to warm up. And that went so quickly that, it seemed like you walk on the court, you take your rackets out of the covers, and the umpire says, play. So I ended up serving first, and I was able to get my serve in, and I came to the net to volley. He hit the return back, and I volleyed to his backhand. He hit the backhand. It was rising as it went past my head, hit the backstop. And so I suddenly realized that, I'd been interested in tennis for 4, 5, 6 years, but tennis was his whole life. When he was 3 years old, he was watching tennis on television there in England, and particularly Wimbledon, and particularly the center court. And he could barely walk. He was so nervous. And so it was that moment that I realized that sometimes we think about ourselves so much and our issues that we forget about other people and what they're going through, whether it's tennis or it's things in their life or anything else. So it may be a little more empathetic to people with that lesson I learned that day.
Well, and there are a lot of things that have changed in the game and in the world since you've played, Stan. But I think one thing that hasn't changed is that same nervousness about stepping onto center court, certainly for the first time, but maybe even for the 20th time, because it is such a special experience. I know you're around the game a lot. Do you get that feedback from players today?
Oh yeah, I mean it's you don't have to wait too long to get the sense of what the players are thinking when they're playing on center court and what it's like. And certainly, even players that have won it multiple times, it's a special moment to walk on that sacred grounds. And even today, I mean, I did a documentary, and I was able to do a little bit of it on that center court. And the guard that was there said, don't step on the grass. I said, step on the side of the court because even as I had tennis shoes on. I had the right shoes on, as a matter of fact, and it was still forbidden for me to touch the grass if I wasn't actually playing a match that day.
Yeah, it's a special place for sure. Stan, I've followed tennis for a long time, and it feels to me like the sport is more popular than ever, in spite of this, latest pickleball craze. But I think more people are playing tennis, and major tournaments and even the tours today are drawing record crowds. From your vantage point, how would you describe the state of tennis today compared to, say, back in the 70s when you were at the height of your career?
Well, it certainly is continued to gain more popular, kind of slowly but surely in a way. There's like 25 million people playing at least, once or twice a month sort of thing. Pickleball has definitely gotten, very popular, and padel is another sport that's become popular in Europe and South America, particularly, and gaining some popularity in the United States. But tennis is still popular. Seeing people that haven't played for a while going back to play. You're seeing young people, picking up the game and realizing that it's the past president of the United States Tennis Association was a doctor, Brian Hainline, and during his term as the president of the USTA, he really did push the fact that this is the healthiest sport in the world, and people that do play tennis seem to live longer, and it's because you're out there getting exercise, and it's a social side of it as well, and the competitive side, and just the opportunity to go out and to play and enjoy a sport and get tremendous exercise is leading to longevity in life. So people are starting to understand that as well, but they also enjoy the competitive side of it. And there's a lot of leagues tennis being played around the United States, and it is more international than ever. So all over the world, you're seeing the popularity of tennis, taking off. And in the United States, at the U.S. Open, it is jam-packed there. One of the things that's unfortunate is we've lost some of the tournaments here in the United States. They've gone to other countries, and it's really unfortunate, particularly a tournament like the tournament that was in Los Angeles. It was when I really started playing the game, and I'd go to the Los Angeles Tennis Club where it was held, and then it went to UCLA. It became an indoor tournament, and then the franchise was sold to Columbia, and it was a tragedy as far as I was concerned. So we've lost some tournaments in the United States, but we do have some very strong ones. The one in Indian Wells is probably considered the fifth most popular tournament in the world for the pros, and they get tremendous crowds out there. Then the next week is in Miami. These two tournaments just took place. And then we have a tournament in Cincinnati during the summer, right before the U.S. Open, which is very popular. But we have lost a lot of the big tournaments here in the United States.
Well, the tournaments you mentioned were really the ones that stand out for me, other than the majors. And I'm glad you mentioned Cincinnati. When I was in high school, it was the first time I went to the tournament in Cincinnati. And back then, Connors and McEnroe were playing, sort of that era, 80s or early 80s, I think, early to mid 80s. And it's really, and the tournament's been around ever since, and it's really become not as big as Indian Wells, but it's certainly big. And I like the Miami tournament too, although it seems to not get quite the crowd that Indian Wells does, or even Cincinnati. But those are all great tournaments on the tour.
They are, and Cincinnati, decided to stay in Cincinnati. The sponsor, the owners, we're actually looking at possibly moving it to Charlotte. And then the city of Cincinnati stepped up big time. And Ben Navarro, who owns that event, really stepped up, and they made some unbelievable improvements. It's almost, like the Indian Wells in that way. And Ben Navarro also owns the tournament that just took place, the Credit One tournament in Charleston for women only. And that has become a very popular event for the women. They just doubled their prize money this year from last year. And so Ben Navarro's been an important player in the game of tennis, especially on the pro level. And he has a daughter named Emma Navarro, who has been in the top 10 in the world. And right now she's dealing with some health things, but she's been doing very well. And of course, Jesse Pegula, whose father is Terry Pegula, and he owns the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres and half of Buffalo, I think. But she's been playing great. And she actually started at our academy when she was 7 years old. And I have a photograph, or she has a photograph of she and I when she was 10 years old. And I wrote in the photograph, "See you at Wimbledon." And this last year, she actually posted it in her social media. And it's fun because I've been staying in touch with her quite a bit. In fact, she's just last week has committed to be part of our academy, the Smith Stearns Tennis Academy, as she slows down in her career, being involved with our program. So it's been a long time relationship with her and her family, who lived here for 7 years.
Well, you might have to wait for her career to slow down. She's top 5 in the world right now, so she's still playing pretty well.
She's playing very well. She's playing the best she's ever played the last 6 months.
Yes, she is. Stan, you've been around world-class players for decades. You just mentioned some of them, and you were obviously number one in the world yourself. tell us what separates the champions, the ones who consistently reach and win Grand Slam events, from the thousands of other talented players competing in the sport, and even from, say, the top 100?
That's a great question, and it's one that that players and parents of players always ask me. When kids are coming to our academy, a lot of the parents think that they're going to be we're going to be working with a kid who's now going to be number one in the world, and it happened. It hasn't happened at all, but Jessie has certainly gotten close. She got to 3. She's now 5 and 6, and so she's had a long career. She's 32 years old right now, but what separates her from these girls that don't quite make it is that she's got great foundation. And my partner, when we started the academy, was Billy Stearns, and he really worked with her privately quite a bit, almost 15 hours a week. And she established a tremendous foundation of balance and timing of the ball. So that's a good start. She has a passion for the game, which, if you look at the top players in the game, Sabalenka, Rybakina, Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, Murray, all these players that have been the best players in the world at one time or other, have a passion for the game. Now, you can have a passion, but you also have to have a discipline to work. You can be passionate, but if you're not working out there, you're not going to progress, and you're not going to be able to win those matches that come down to the 3rd set or the 5th set in the men's game. And those great players don't win all the time. But for instance, in the men's game, you've had those 3 guys that have won almost all the Grand Slam events, with the exception of a couple in the last 15 years. And so it's amazing that in a sport like tennis, when you have a mano-a-mano situation, it's not like golf where you're playing against the course and, of course, the other players, but it's the course that you're fighting, and you can't really influence the course so much. But in tennis, you can influence the other player across the net. And the goal, I always tell these kids, the goal, if they're in the juniors or college or pros, your goal is to be so good that the opponent, when they walk on the court to play you, is just hoping to get a good score. They're really not, hoping. They say they want to win. They say that they could win, but down deep in their heart, they don't really think they can win that match, and they're just hoping to have a good score, 6-4, 6-4, or take a set off the top player. So it's a win-win situation. They take a set, they lose, they're happy. The player that wins, the top player, is happy. He moves on to the next round, and that's the position you want to be in. That you're so good that the players just want to have a close match with you. Now, of course, that's rare air. There's only a few players that ever get in that situation. But a great example is Nadal on clay. Or in my era, Borg came along just near the end of my career. And my goal against Borg was just to survive, on clay at the French Open. I mean, I really thought there's no chance for me to win. And I was a pretty good player. Now, Nadal was the same way. He won it 14 times. I told people that no one was going to win the French Open 6 times like Borg. And I was right. Nadal won it 14 times. And the players go on the court just saying, okay, even players like Federer, who is considered maybe the best, or even Djokovic, they go on that court in the finals of the French Open thinking, well, maybe I could win if Nadal doesn't play well. But so that happens in tennis, and that's one of the things that sets them apart. The being able to compete when they're not playing well, and that is another element of the top players. They win when they're not playing well. They figure it out, and that's what I like about tennis. Until recently, you couldn't coach, you couldn't be coached on the court during a match. And now the both the WTA and the ATP have allowed coaching on your side of the net. So you can get advice from coaches, you can get encouragement, and literally talk to them, very close as they come over to towel off and on your side of the court when you're the coach. And so that is happening today. But I ideally would have just no coaching. And the reason for that is that, let's say I'm number 100 in the world, and I can't really afford to get a great coach. If I was playing today and there was coaching allowed, I would have hired Pancho Segura, who I told you earlier, I think was maybe the best coach who's ever coached. I would have had him on my team, and he would have been there, and he would have been analyzing the opponent, tearing down their weaknesses and the subtle points of these great players, of how to play points. And if I was number one in the world, I could afford him, and that number 100 player couldn't afford him. And so that's the way I see it today: is that the top players have an advantage; they can afford a great coach, where the lesser players maybe can't. And you already have the advantage of being the best player or one of the best players, and I don't really like that idea. But I like the idea is that you're out there on the court, you're on your own, you have to figure it out. You have to be physically strong. You have to be strategically smart. Tactically, you got to figure out how to play. And of course, emotionally, you got to be able to handle it. And mentally, you got to be able to make it through those periods of time when your opponent is on a run, as they say in basketball, where they're playing great tennis. You got to stay in there. Don't get discouraged. And one of the things I say to our kids in our academy is the 5 words: let it go, move on. And it applies to not only tennis, but golf and other sports. It applies to life. When you hit the ball, once it leaves your racket, you cannot control where it's going to go. You cannot control how that shot is going to impact your opponent. And you've got to, if you're still in the point, you can still control, have control of what happens in the point. But once you lose a point, the point's over. You can't change that. You cannot change it. You have to accept it and then move on. And I've heard Nadal and Federer say in talks that they've made to young players, you have to accept what's happened. If you lose in the finals of Wimbledon, which both Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, all those players have done, they've lost after having match point and have been devastated. But they have to accept it. And in life, I think we have to, in many situations, we have to kind of accept that it's happened. You can't accept that it's going to go on if it's something happened in your life, but you have to accept, okay, it's happened. What have I learned from that? And let's move on and maybe do better the next time.
Well, and it's important to do that during the match too. So it's one thing, certainly, if you lose a big match. I was at the French Open last year, and Alcaraz came back down 2-0 with Andre Agassi sitting in the box watching and thinking about his French Open victory when he was down 2-0 and came back. And so it's one thing to do it after the match is over, but you also have to do it after the point's over, right? Or after the game's over, or after the set's over. And so Alcaraz obviously was able to do that, down 2-0, and comes back in a marathon match to win the French Open. And you mentioned Tom Brady earlier. That's something that Tom Brady has always said, that you forget the play after it happened. So you run the play, and whatever happened, that's history, and you move on to the next play. So it's certainly the same thing with tennis during the match.
It's in every sport, and it's in life as well. And it's tough to get over the discouragement of things that have happened that just doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. Uh, it shouldn't have happened. It may be an accident of some sort. Just things that you can't control. And in every sport, coaches continue to tell their players to try to take care of the things you can control and not get too caught up or discouraged or disappointed with things you can't control. I mean, certainly in tennis, the simple things you can't control the weather that you're playing in. You can't control the court you're playing in. You can't control the player you're playing against. You can't control uh, things that happen, line calls and things like that take place. Those are things you just can't control. You have to play through those things and figure out how to use if it's a windy day, you can use that to your advantage. And the thing I tell kids is that there's one thing you know about your opponent that you've never played before on a windy day, and that is they hate the conditions. You know that because you hate them as well. But okay, that could be a big advantage to you. Mentally, you can accept what's going on and then figure out how to use the wind, how to hit balls that will take the player off the court, maybe drop shot against the wind where the ball will stop even faster. Use the wind and not just whine about it and lose your focus because of freaky things that happen because of funny bounces and gusts that come up and that sort of thing.
That's well said. Stan, I want to move on after your career in professional tennis. And for many professional athletes, as you know, their playing career represents the peak of their success. It's the highlight of their life. But in your case, it was really just the starting point. How did your relationship with Adidas come about? And whose idea was it to put your name and face on a tennis shoe?
Well, that story has been told many times, and in my documentary as well, Who is Stan Smith? But that happened when I was just won Wimbledon, and Adidas had this shoe that was already on the market, and it had the name of Robert Hayet on the shoe. And the shoe was created by Robert Hayet and Horst Dassler, who was Adi Dassler's son. And Adidas got the name, and in Europe, it's actually referred to as Adidas. In the United States and other parts of the world, it's referred to as Adidas. But that name came from Adi Dassler, and it was shortened. But Horst was one of his 5 children. He had 4 daughters and a son. And Horst, at one time, really became maybe the most influential person in sports because Adidas was really involved in soccer. In Europe, it's called football. And they actually still create the ball that's used in the World Cup, which is a big deal. And he would actually recruit countries like France and Italy and Spain to be wearing Adidas clothing and shoes and equipment. And so, but at the time, Horst wanted to get a stronger identity of the shoe in the United States. People didn't know Robert Hayet so much, and I was the number one player in the world and American. And so my agent, worked out an agreement that they wanted to put my name on a hang tag on the shoe. And my agent was strong and said, no, we'd like to have his photograph on the tongue of the shoe and the signature on the tongue of the shoe, and maybe the name on the side as well. So that's what happened. And Robert's name was still on the shoe. And for about 4 or 5 years, both of our names, my likeness and signature, and his name were on the shoe. And because the shoe was selling okay, it was the first leather tennis shoe ever in tennis. It started in basketball a little bit before that, but there were no leather tennis shoes for tennis. We played in Converse and a Jack Purcell shoe and a Chuck Taylor shoe, but they're all canvas shoes. And so this was a big deal to have a leather shoe because it was more comfortable. It was a little more stylish. It lasted longer. It looked better. And so that was the start. I thought it was a 5-year arrangement, and it went another 6 years, and then it went another 10 years, and on and on and on. And just last year, they sold 100 millionth pair of shoes with my name on it. So it's been a crazy ride.
Well, it has been quite a ride. And I had forgotten that when the shoe was first introduced, it was marketed actually as a high performance tennis shoe. But somewhere along the way, it obviously evolved into a fashion icon. And even today, people are wearing Stan Smith Adidas or Adidas. And it's become one of the most recognizable brands in the world. When did that shift start to happen? And did you ever imagine that you would be we'd be talking today and you would have verbalized that you sold 100 million pairs of your shoes?
Yeah, that is another dream. Kind of like those dream goals I had. Although I didn't even have a dream of the shoe being around, at this point in time. But the Adidas really uh, had some marketing geniuses along the way. Uh, but the shoe itself, like other athletic shoes, started to be embraced by just the average person. And, in the late 80s, I guess. So my name was on it, started in 73, and it was purely a performance shoe, and it was the best performance shoe. And then people started wearing it off the court, and then people that didn't play tennis started, picking it up, and then the fashion business, embraced it, and Phoebe Philo, walked the her runway at the end of her show wearing the shoe, and then they had other uh, fashion people, designers, celebrities. Uh, Pharrell Williams got into the business, and then a lot of singers, the Beastie Boys and Jay Z, and people that the young people recognized and followed and embraced, and they started wearing the shoe, and that became uh, you know popular because of their endorsement of the shoe by wearing the shoe. Then you had preppies, you had hip hop artists, you had we went to Dubai, and a girl was waiting on us, and her room was from the Philippines, and her ambition was to save enough money to buy that shoe in the Philippines, and uh, it just took off around the world. But then it kind of went up and down a little bit, and then lost a little bit of its momentum. And my wife and Donald Dell, my agent, had a meeting at Wimbledon, which we always did. And in 2011, they said to me that they wanted to take it off the market for 2 years. And I said, "Well, what's your?" But they said they wanted to relaunch it in 2014. And I said, "Well, what's your business plan? And are you going to, you know, put some assets behind it and get it back?" And they said, "Yeah, we've got some ideas, and we think it's going to come back and that sort of thing." And so we really walked out of that meeting thinking, it's been about 40 years. It's been a good run, and it's probably not going to see the light of day. But on January 15th of 2014, it came back with an unbelievable momentum. And one of the things they did is they had 100 influencers um, were given a pair of shoes, and they had their picture on the shoes of the tongue, and they put it in a really nice uh, white box with a green stripe and kind of a parachute bag that they gave it to them in, and a little history card in the box itself, talking about the history of the shoe. And all they did is ask them to put it on their social media, and it really helped drive more interest again. And again, they started using, more celebrities that would wear the shoe. And the great thing about it is that actually a lot of the celebrities just wore it because they liked it, and they weren't being paid. They weren't, getting any sort of benefits from it. And of course, the authentic credibility of people like that just, uh, help drive it. And again, like I said, it was, you have tennis teams or sororities or fraternities or, the preppy crowd or uh, the crowd in the ghetto or it was just the musical crowd, they had in England, in the northern part of England, where a lot of those groups formed. A lot of the people that really supported those groups, uh, the the that is the authors of the various songs or the playwrights or the people that worked for those groups as they traveled around the world wore the shoe. They just embraced the shoe. So it became a kind of an everyday shoe for all types of genders of people, both men and women and boys and girls. And one of my favorite things is to see a mother and daughter together wearing the shoe, because most daughters wouldn't be caught dead wearing something their mother would be wearing, or their father. And I've seen the mother fathers as well. And so it's one of those things that's been accepted by different generations. And it's going through kind of a planned scarcity right now. And the plans are to really ramp up again at the end of this year and in 27 and make another big charge.
Well, it's a great shoe, and it's a sleek, very clean look with the white and the just a little bit of green, and it really appeals to young people. It appeals to older people. My father, who passed away just last year, he was in his early 90s, and he wore those shoes for a very long time, probably starting when they first came out. He was an avid tennis player, played tennis into his 80s, avid golfer, played golf until he was almost 90, and that was his go-to shoe. I have a question. You were talking about the girls wearing the same shoe, your shoe, and their mom wearing it too. I know you have a big family. We both have 4 children. You're a little bit older than I am, but we're both grandfathers. And I wonder, with as many grandchildren as you have, I read 17, maybe you have more now. Do you get any street cred with your grandchildren because you have this cool shoe?
Uh, you know, the story, a great story is that my wife and I were in Paris, and we were on the subway there, and we saw a couple across the way that had a little baby that had a pair of the shoes on, and we didn't know at the time that Adidas had made a baby shoe. It wasn't an infant; it was like a 2 year old, and the shoe was still very small, and in our broken French, we asked the lady where they got the shoes. Yes, I just got this. This is a new shoe. And so at that time, we had been married for about 2 or 3 years, had no children. And we said, wouldn't it be neat if our children wore the Stan Smith shoe? And, uh, and sure enough, they did. And then now our 17 grandchildren are wearing the shoe, and they call it the Stans or they call it the Pops. Actually, they made 27 pairs of shoes for the 17 grandchildren, the 4 children and their spouses, and my wife and I. So that was 27. And they put my birth date on the inside of the shoe, and they put Pops, which is what the grandkids call me, and on the shoe. And of course, now that was about 3 years ago. They've grown out of those shoes, but they probably have handed me down to the next one, the smaller one. But it's been fun to do that. We took 10 of our grandchildren to Wimbledon when they celebrated my 50th anniversary of winning Wimbledon in 72. So in 2022, we took them there, and then we took the 10 to Herzogenaga, which is the headquarters of Adidas in Germany. And so they got to see that, and they made a big deal with photographs and all sorts of things while we were there. And so the grandchildren have a feel for what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, what a wonderful celebration for your family. Stan, creating meaningful, memorable moments is at the heart of the work that you do at Stan Smith events. And I want to ask you about that. You and your business partner, Gary Neighbor, wrote the book Winning Trust, your newest book. You've written several, to share the simple yet powerful process you've used for years to build relationships and accelerate trust. What made this the right time for you and Gary to put those insights into a book and share that wisdom with a broader audience?
Well, that's a good question, because we really are looking at how our company is going to continue on. Is I will be spending a little less time, and Gary would be spending a little less time. So we want to codify all the principles that we've been working with over the last 30 years. And we realized that we also wanted to have kind of a workbook for people that read the book, but also for our staff. And those are going to be taking over our place as to, what we've done and how we've done it and why we've done it, and the principles that we've kind of lived by. So that was the reason to do this now after 30 years. And we also started the company with the idea of helping companies build relationships with their clients, uh, and to build these bonds. And then we realized as we went along is that we really were helping them build, real trust in each other if they went a little deeper than just the transactional relationships. And so we realized that if we got people to really get to know each other better and in a deeper way, that they would have more trust, and when things go wrong, you could work through issues. And so the, we started with this acronym SERVE, and I quickly kind of go through. The S is to strategize. So we would strategize as a company before we'd go to a client, and then we'd get with a client and then suggest an event that they might do, or some way of making it special. And then that's the S. The E would be to engage, and that's where you really try to set up an atmosphere that people could really get to spend time together, and around the dinner table, or at an event, or in an activity of some sort. The R is to recreate, and we found that was more important than a lot of clients thought, because they said, well, let's just have content and no recreation, no activities, because we only have a certain amount of time, and we don't have time to play tennis or golf or anything else. And so we convinced them that by doing these recreational things, you really bring the everybody down to the same level. And so you have these executives that from one company, they're working with other executives, but they have this pecking order that they have. But by having them at the same level competing, whether it's cornhole or ping pong or tennis or golf or whatever, it really helps them, especially when they set up teams and they get together and have some teamwork working. So that's the R. The V is to volley, and that is to really throw ideas back and forth, to problem solve, really. And we found one of our executives said, I'm not the CEO, I'm the chief problem solver. And so we actually got some great input, not only in working with these leaders around the world in the events, but they were very nice to give us some quotes about their philosophy of leadership and how to handle things, particularly like things that may go south in a relationship or a negotiation, that sort of thing. So the V is to volley, to go back and forth and develop a win-win situation. The last E is to elevate, and that really is two parts. It's really making sure that details are taken care of. It's nothing worse than you have a great dinner, unbelievable relationship, things that are happening, and then the bus is late, and you got to sit around and wait, and it loses some of the interest. And then the other part of that is to make it special. To develop a hook. We've done things like giving my shoes that are signed, or the books that I've done, or we will provide memorabilia at events signed by a McEnroe or a Federer, or Serena, and we take photographs. And then one of the things we'll do is to have a prediction, so that people have to predict not only who's going to win the match, but what the score is going to be and what the time of the match is going to be. And we give maybe a racket to the winner or something like that, that's signed by, Nadal or something. So we try to make it special. The hook is maybe the event itself, maybe the venue, it may be the people they get to meet, and the experience that they have. And they can come back and pick up the phone with their client and say, geez, remember when, Sampras beat Federer in the finals of Wimbledon, and da da da. And so those are memories that we try to provide, moments that matter, that are memories for the people and for their clients. And we found that uh, it's resonated with people, that they are, when they develop a strong relationship, it makes everything more meaningful in their relationships with their clients. And even, during COVID, we had a client that was going to buy buy a company, and they hadn't had a chance to even spend time with themselves, let alone with the new clients. And there was an element of trust that was not there. And so they called us up to see if we could help, and we put together an event, and they got to spend 2 or 3 days together, and it really helped them establish this relationship with the two companies, merging together and developing trust within themselves.
Well, it's a great book. I have it right here, and it's chock full of wisdom on how to build relationships and win trust. And and I think our listeners and viewers know too, how important building relationships and winning trust is, whether we're talking about business or personal relationships. And so I highly recommend the book. And for our listeners and viewers, we'll share a link to Winning Trust in the show notes.
Yeah, trust is definitely one of those diminishing assets today, particularly today. And so some of these principles can be helpful, and we're very, very thankful for some of these leaders sharing some things, particularly being vulnerable when you're with a group, and that can lead to more discussion around issues that are taking place, like you say, not only in business but in their personal lives and situations they're going through.
It's a timely book for sure, and I appreciate you sharing it. Stan, our show, as you know, is called Life Excellence, and I'm curious, what does excellence mean to you? You've certainly achieved it in your career and in multiple domains of your life.
Well, I believe that God's given everybody a certain amount of talent and ability, and so to me, the goal really is to get the most out of what God's given you, and whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a sport, it doesn't have to be any other uh, you know unusual situation. It can just be you know living a life, getting the most out of the talent that you've been given, and giving back to those that need some help. Certainly, most people that get involved in excellence in their fields have a platform, and they can really make a difference in the world and in other people's lives. And so, as you get older, you definitely can have the opportunity, if you have that platform, to give back and maybe make an impact in today's world. And I've always been interested in young people, certainly through our academy. My wife and I have been very involved the last 30 years in the Boys and Girls Club of Hilton Head. I was a campaign leader that financed the club itself, and my wife has been a volunteer for 20 some years, and I'm still on the board of the local thing, and I've been involved with the Heritage Classic Foundation, which you mentioned early on has raised over $61 million for the community, and that's through the various charities in our community. So I've had the opportunity to give back to our community and to the U.S. and to the world. Hopefully, maybe my hope is sort of altruistic that the shoe would be a common bond for people all over the world, because it is. You'll see it almost anywhere you go.
Well, you've certainly given back in many ways to the world, and we appreciate you for that, Stan. I just have one more question. How long do you think it will be before we see another American win a men's Grand Slam title?
That's a question that
In 23 years.
Andy Roddick has had to answer that question 650,000 times. And it's who's going to take his place as the U.S. major winner. And, Ben Shelton certainly is knocking on the door. Tommy Paul, we've got some talented guys out there. Tien, Taylor Fritz has come close, so close. And so we like I said, we've got about, I'd say, 8 players that are knocking on the door, actually pretty darn close in the top 20, and several in the top 10 in the last couple of years. And so hopefully one of those guys is going to, get a hot streak and do something at the U.S. Open. I think that might be the Australian. The French is, you got to be a grinder out there. We have some that are been that way in the U.S. over the years, but hopefully one of those guys will do something.
Well, there are a couple players at the top that really don't seem to want to contribute to the success of American tennis. Yeah. So we'll see. Stan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real honor to spend this time with you, and I truly appreciate the insight and the value that you've shared with our audience and all that you've done in the world.
Well, thank you, Brian, and keep up the good work.
I appreciate that. Thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Please support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with Stan Smith on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can also learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.